Hello and welcome, Inspired Podcast community. This is your new episode. My name is Caroline, and my today's guest is Aaron Ryan, and I'm so happy that he said yes to our interview. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So great. And you already showed me your books, and we will talk about your books. Of course, you are the author, Aaron Ryan, and I would like to introduce you to the audience first. You are an award winning best selling author of the Dissonance series and several sci fi thrillers, children's books, and business guides. From writing his first story at age 7 to becoming a multi genre storyteller, your passion for creativity has fueled a prolific career. You live in Washington with your wife, 2 sons, and a lively household of pets. Welcome to the Inspired Podcast. Wow, Aaron Ryan.
That was quite the intro. And yes, I was fact checking you as we were going along, going, yes, yes, that's correct. Yes, yes, yes. Perfect.
Yes, and you are lucky because yesterday I mixed up I mixed up a bio. This is always interesting when this is not the person I'm talking to, but of course we have questions for you. The first question is, take us back to that moment in second grade when you wrote The Electric Boy. What did that experience unlock inside you, and how did it shape the storyteller you've become today?
Oh my goodness. So this is reaching back a long, long way because you can't really see in the camera, but there are definitely gray hairs there. So second grade is a long time ago. But yeah, it was an assignment that was issued by my second grade teacher. We all complied. It was construction paper and lined college 3-ring hole punched paper. And it's so funny because I had no idea what I was doing then. It was just crude narratives and crude drawings, stick figure drawings. But what I found is that life really does come full circle. I recently released a book called Forecast, which is about a weatherman who gets struck by lightning and is imbued with special powers to see and prevent the future. And so I literally went back and looked at the Electric Boy and went, oh my gosh, I'm writing the Electric Boy again, 45 years later. So it really, like, again, life just comes full circle.
Oh, I love it. And I totally agree because I started writing as well in my, I don't know what you call it, second grade or so. When I started writing stories as well. So my next question to you is, your Dissonant series has captivated readers around the world. What do you think it is about your stories that resonate so deeply with people, especially in these times?
Yeah, I mean, boy, 2024 was a really crazy year. They've been crazy years. I mean, ever since, really 2020, we've kind of adapted to a new normal of just craziness. But last year, I wasn't intending to write a story that was any kind of a referendum on the craziness. However, it kind of took on that mantle, and it's okay, I think, that it did. But Dissonance is a story about an alien invasion that takes place in 2026. The first volume is set in 2042, 16 years after the invasion. You find out what happened. And it really is it is kind of a referendum on society, that it's so sad that 16 years after an alien invasion, we're still not getting along. We're still, throwing others under the bus and putting ourselves forward. And, everyone they're all an expense to our survival. So it's sad that way. But I think what really makes it attractive to readers, and I really intended it this way, was it's very attainable. It's not set, 1,000 years into the future on some strange planet with weird names. It is very, very close to where we are now. Society has kind of experienced arrested development in 2026. So in 2042, it's really not much different from 2025. And we're just trying to survive from they're terrifying aliens called Gorgons. You can't even look at, or they'll freeze you.
Wow, I love that story. And I was imagining myself in 2442, or what did you say? Yes,
Yeah.
and there are also several examples of movies or so, like Back to the Future or 1984, the famous book, and where we we experience the year in the story, right? And then we can have an interview 20 years from now,
Yeah.
or 17 years, and then we can see what turned into reality from your story.
Yeah, well, hopefully it wasn't too prescient. I mean, honestly, the Gorgons are terrifying. They are
Mhm.
absolutely terrifying. The sad thing about the story, about the narrative in the story, rather, is that humans are always the worst enemy of humans. So here we have this ferocious, terrifying, predatory alien race that has just completely domineered our planet, and we are, eking out an existence in the shadows. But really, the true enemy is always man. So we should be, whereas we should be all working together to eradicate the species and kick them off the planet. Again, that you have elements of disharmony, disunity, and dissonance that just quite, haven't quite been purged. So yeah, I think I didn't make any predictions on the future other than writing the prequel in 2026 and wondering who was going to be president. And I had to actually go back and change what I wrote because I didn't want to be wrong. Had I kept it in, I would have been right. But I think I lost my status as a prognosticator by changing it to something more general. I don't know.
I understand, and I also love the title Dissonance. And
Yeah.
yes, and let's do this. Let's have another interview, of course, and then we see where we are at and how many books you have been published then. And my next question for you is, you've written across many genres, from sci-fi thrillers to children's books and business guides. How do you decide what story to tell next, and what keeps your creativity flowing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So honestly, the reference guides are they're not necessarily mashups, but they are taken from previously published works that were added to, embellished upon, brought more into the current year, and modernized that way. Those I'm pretty much done with those. I don't feel compelled to write any more business reference guides or instructional type reference books or anything like that. My heart is in creation, and I love fiction. I love good fiction. So if I had my way, it would be exclusively a post-apocalyptic writer. But as you can see back here, I have two little ones, and so they demand that I create other things besides post-apocalyptic fiction. So I was telling my 7-year-old, 8-year-old rather, he was 8, a story one night. It was either incredibly compelling or incredibly boring because he fell asleep while I was telling it to him. I took it to mean, though, that it just fostered this sense of peace inside him and lulled him to sleep. And I came away from that going, wow, Lord, what a great story. Thank you for that. And so I tried to recollect it as best as I could and capture it. And that became my very first children's book called The Ring of Truth. I got it published, brought it in, showed it to my 8-year-old and said, look, look. And I don't know why I didn't see this coming, but my 5-year-old saw that and said, "Oh, that's great, Daddy. Where's mine?" And so I was like, "Oh, I should have seen that coming." So then I wrote a book for my 5-year-old called The Sword of Joy, and I'm now working on a third one to comprise a trilogy. Those will be done though. I am a post-apocalyptic writer, and I'm working on a great new trilogy right now.
Wow. I'm curious, of course, now. What a great story. I love it. And I love also that you took us into the writing process a little bit, right? So
Yeah.
about the creativity that is flowing.
Yeah, it strikes when it strikes and it manifests how it manifests. So I think there are two different types of writers, by the way. There's, and if you've heard this, pardon me for reiterating, but there are two types. One is a pantser and one is a planner. Well known within the industry. A pantser is a fly by the seat of their pants, organic style of writer, and it kind of, it can be impulsive. It just kind of organically grows and manifests into a story. A planner, on the other hand, is one who has mileposts and mile markers, and it basically bullet points out their entire story. I have guideposts that I would like to get to. I have an overarching sense of the narrative that I'm going to be writing, but overall, I don't like to constrain myself to, I must go here and then must say that and then must do this and then must have that development. I really like, our art imitates life, and I really like to have a story kind of go where it feels like it needs to. and let the characters lead you. So to that end, I just, a harebrained idea for a story. I'll follow it, and I will write a little bit here, a little bit there, and then if a new story idea comes up, ooh, pause this, start working on this. And it can be a little bit, knee jerk, but I like that you can grow many things at once.
Wow, I totally agree. I would say I am also a sort of that writer, but I wasn't before because I was really rational and I had an accounting business, by the way, and I have to say this in every episode until I believe it myself, you know, and it's crazy. And you already mentioned it, you are guided by the spirit or by God, and you take inspired action as well, and you are not so much the planner.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, when the story hits you, and I was just hit by that story when I told my son. I just went, "Wow, Lord, that was amazing." And I've got a pretty good track record of telling my son bedtime stories, both of them. It was just that one in particular was better than anything I'd ever told him. I just felt, boy, this really relates to where he's at as an 8-year-old. Um, it was really connective and emotional and sweet, and so it just turned into a really good message about dealing with shame. Little kids struggle with shame. They internalize things that they've done wrong. They incorporate it into their identity. My wife and I are very careful to say, if we're upset about something, we are displeased with what you've done, not with who you are. It's not about who you are, it's what you've done. The behavior needs to be corrected. We love you. And so that's what that story is about, just reinforcing identity and battling shame and equipping that little boy how to deal with it himself.
Wow, I love the word reinforcing identity. I never heard this before, and I love words, by the way. And of course, I have another question for you with words as well. Behind every author is a life story. How have your personal experiences, both challenges and triumphs, shaped the worlds and characters you create?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. So ultimately, the primary protagonist in the Dissonance series is a 23-year-old Army sergeant named Cameron Jet Shipley, nicknamed Jet. He's very much a cynic. I am very much a cynic. And so some of your characters really reflect your best and worst attributes. And I think that's only natural. It's just, again, life imitating art. And so you can flip that, and art imitates life too. So your characters can represent this good side of you, and that one can represent that bad side of you, or that undesirable trait. I think it's kind of a smorgasbord, an amalgam of who you are, and a little bits go into different characters that way. But I think for Forecast, which was the novel I just completed, the last big novel I just completed, that character is very much a cynic as well. And when he stumbles into the situation that he's now finding himself embroiled into, he's got to make a choice. Does he embrace this, or does he continue to live a life of denial? And I think we all face that. Um, we all face those moments of truth where the rubber meets the road in our life, where we have to accept something and grow from it, or just continue to reject, 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 and you have this constant conflict. I've been there as well, so I speak from experience in that one. One thing that is a sad chapter of my wife's and my life is we've been cyber stalked. I'm sure that will eventually make its way into a book. It's a painful topic though, so I'm not sure how that would manifest itself. So,
Oh, what do you mean by that? Now I have to ask what that means. And do you plan to write a book about that?
well, that would be a hard topic again. It's
Mhm.
something that hits very personal and very close to home. Cyberstalk is when you have people on the internet that are terrorizing you for whatever reason, and so we've dealt with that. I prefer not to write things that are so close to home, but to put them in a fictionalized setting. It allows a little bit more removal and thus objectivity when you create. So, if there's something that you've personally been embroiled in, it can hit very close to home. Your writing can become so much more personal, but you lose a little bit of the objectivity because you are you. You can't subtract yourself out of that situation.
Yes, so I have to ask, how did you solve it? And wouldn't it be, I would say if you write that book and the people recognize themselves, would it be not give them too much energy, like attention?
I don't know. I think what I would do is I would very much write it a third person, not a first person. I really prefer to write in first person. In fact, when I write books that involve multiple characters, I like to write in multiple first person, dual or tri first person viewpoints. Uh, that allows you to get into the head of the character. It's less omniscient because you have a finite way of telling a story through the eyes of whoever happens to be the protagonist in that chapter. But a book like that, I would probably want to distance myself a little bit so that I could be more objective. I think, however, though, it would give a voice to people who have suffered the same thing, and hopefully it would be a cathartic read for them. It'd be their therapeutic.
I understand, and I really love that project, even though it has a personal or embarrassing story behind. I don't know if the words are correct, but you know what I
Yeah,
want to say here. It's very interesting, so I will follow you, of course. And this would be my next question: where can we find you, or when people want to reach out to you after listening to this episode?
yeah, that's my favorite question. Yay! So, number one, the author website is authoraaronryan.com. And I have to clarify, it's not awfulaaronryan.com. It's authoraaronryan.com, just to be clear. And then the Dissonance Saga Volume 1 reality has actually been adapted for the screen, and it's being pitched to streaming networks right now. So I'm very excited about that. This whole series is at dissonancetheseries.com. That's hard to spell, and it's a longer one, so you can actually go to getthesebooks.com, and that will take you to the Dissonance website. So authoraaronryan.com or getthesebooks.com. My new trilogy that I'm working on is a Christian post-apocalyptic sci-fi saga that is end times related, tribulation related, and it is called The End. You can go to thisisnottheend.com, and that will take you there as well. So very excited about this new saga. It's amazing.
Wow, I'm excited too. I love that, and I love the little um, play on words here, and also that you are going to how you call this is adapted as a movie or as a show.
Yeah,
Yes, I love it. So we can watch this. And yeah, of course, I have another question, and you have time for our next question. Many dream of writing a book, but never take the leap. What advice do you have for aspiring authors who struggle to find their voice or fear putting their work out into the world?
great question. So many people will suffer from imposter syndrome or analysis paralysis. The former deals with like, who am I to write a book? And the latter deals with, I just can't get started. I'm spinning my wheels and overthinking this, and stuck and can't actually take the leap from concept to action. I think both really just take that leap of faith to trust that you do have what it takes to write a book, and to actually put it into action. So one of the things that has been really formative for me is a quote by Oscar Wilde, and he said, "Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken." I think that's very instrumental in helping you, whether you struggle with analysis paralysis or imposter syndrome. Be you. No matter what you do, be yourself. You're unique. You're not an imposter. You're a unique human with a unique voice. Be yourself. You can take steps that other people can't. You can take that action that other people can't, and it'll be authentically, uniquely you. So be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. So it's a great mantra.
What a great quote. And that also means no one can do it but you, and the way
Yeah.
you do it as well, and you have to do it. And that reminds me also, there's this quote from Wayne Dyer: don't die with the music still inside you. So don't die with
Mm,
the book still still inside you.
yeah.
I would encourage everyone. And what do you say? I mean, practically, how to start? I heard advices like don't start with the first chapter, start in the middle or something like that.
Honestly, what works for me is I start with the book cover. I have to see a finished product first, and that gives me a great visualization of what this could actually look like. People do judge a book by its cover, and so I want to start with something. I want to go from the end and then back to the beginning and work my way to the end. So the end is so funny because my new series is called The End. It's I start with a book cover and the concept and having it visualized because I can imagine holding that in my hand. Now I just have to fill all the pages. That doesn't work for everyone. And what you said is absolutely true. People like to, recommend start with chapter 3 or start with the last chapter or whatever, then work your way back to it. I have to just start at the very end and visualize what it's going to look like and then go from there.
Oh, I never heard this before. And do you do the cover art yourself? So are you talented with that?
Yeah, well, I was using a I was using software for years that is so out of date right now. It's actually called Microsoft Photo Draw.
Yeah.
And if this tells you anything, they phased out support for it in the year 2000. So, 24 years I've been still using that. I moved on to new software called Affinity Designer, which is very similar to Photoshop, and it's a one-time fee. I love that. It's one-time fee and not this, continuing subscription every month until Jesus returns. Um, I love Affinity Designer, and I've been able to whip up some great covers for my books and great advertisements to promote my works using that software. It's been wonderful.
Thank you for this recommendation because I always love to learn new things and I love tech stuff as well. And I think this was our interview because you already told us about your next projects. You showed us the books. I asked where we can find you. So please reach out to Aaron. He's amazing. And check out the books. We have this is not the end.com and get these books, something like that. And I put it in the show notes, of course. So now
Yeah.
is time for your final thoughts to the audience, please.
Well, we talked about a mantra earlier, and my life mantra, I just wish I could apply this to fitness and weight because I would go so far. But, that's a struggle for many. So, a whole different subject for a whole different interview. But I love the mantra. I love the concept of a mantra. I love the mantra, however, from that I've adopted from a movie I like to pretend doesn't exist, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And Qui-Gon Jinn says to a young Anakin Skywalker, your focus determines your reality. If you let that sink in for a minute, I actually had this turned into a plaque. Your focus determines your reality, always. And I think this is such a great quote because you can manifest what you want to see sheerly by focusing on it. My focus was to become a fantastic voiceover artist used by some of the world's Fortune 500 companies. This is my studio back here. I used to not have this. I used to have nothing. My focus was to become a best-selling author. My books have nearly all of them been on the bestseller rank, #1. My focus was to become an award-winning author. I've won, several awards. If you focus on it and you focus on it and you focus on it enough and keep it your focus can eventually become a reality. So that's my mantra. Your focus determines your reality. Get a mantra for yourself as well. See how far you'll go.
Okay, thank you so much. Your focus becomes your reality. I have another question because you said this is the topic for a completely different interview, and now I want to do this other interview. How important are when you focus, okay? You focus. How important are emotions with your
Yeah.
focus?
Boy, I am an emotional guy, #1. So there's no bypassing that. When I'm writing, for example, and I think you have a triple threat in me. I'm just going to admit that I'm a writer. I can also edit my own work, although I will outsource it to an editor, and I'm also a voiceover artist, so I can narrate it and record it that way. So when I was writing Dissonance, for example, there are people who die in the story. I had to freely embrace that. I didn't want them to die. As the creator of that person, that character, that's my child, that's my baby, this is my story. To then kill them off is so gut wrenching, and you have to all addiction is failure to grieve. Great quote by Dan Allender. I had to grieve and and mourn the loss of that person in the writing. And then I had to mourn their loss again in the editing, and I'm bawling. And then if you listen to the audiobook, when that person gets killed off and other people get killed off, I had to mourn them again. And so it's an arduous process that you have to be willing to go through, but it makes it so much more connective for both you as the writer and them as the reader.
Okay.
It gives the story substance.
So I would say full circle, because you have this, your focus becomes your reality, then you have the connection, and I would call it, if I may, I would call it God mode, because you are the creator, you create the characters, then you decide over or life or death, both.
Yeah,
You create, you decide, and then you enrich it with emotions that deepens the connection and make it real. So yeah, thank you so much. I
absolutely.
learned
My
a lot.
pleasure.
Thank you, and I see you in the next episode.